I'd like to call our meeting to order. Are there any citizens that have concerns that are not on the agenda?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a citizen comment.
Okay.
And full disclosure, there has been much talk about reviewing the PVRSD regional agreement. With this, no time like the present. So yesterday, as a Bernardston resident and a taxpayer, I went out to our 4 towns and I put forth a proposal for an amendment to the PVRSD's regional agreement. The amendment proposal changes are to Section 1, pages 1 and 2, A, power, duties, and composition, and number 1, number 5, qualification and term limits, C, elections, number 1, 2, and 3. This proposed change deals with qualification and term limits and numbers of schools.
Excuse me, do you have copies for people?
I do.
You do? That would be great, and then we can read along with you.
Well, I'm not going to read the changes. I'm just going to tell you short graph what I did.
Yeah, and then maybe we can, you mind passing those out. That'd be great.
We're not going to respond to citizen concerns.
No.
So the qualifications and term limits and numbers of school committee members elected. So I visited the 4 towns and then I each towns have all the same paperwork for the proposed amendment. I want to pass this down. I'm going to pass it around.
Take one.
Need another one?
Oh, let's leave one for Martha.
There might be one at the end.
You can summarize what
I'm sorry?
you can summarize what the changes are for us?
Oh, well, I just gave all my paperwork away if you want to give me that.
Well, you have them,
So this-
I have 2 here. Somebody don't
One
not
goes to
have
Mark,
one?
one goes back to Martha.
Okay.
So basically what I did is under powers and duties and composition, I talked about 7 members that the committee would go from 12 to 7. Bernardston 2 members, Northfield 2 members, Leiden 1 member, and Warwick 1 member. There will also be 1 at-large member voted by all 4 towns. Then number 5, which was the next amended piece in this, qualifications and term limits. Members that are elected to the school committee may not work in any capacity for the district or receive any payments for services. In addition to those members that have conflicts of interest that are not financial must disclose these conflicts prior to being elected. Each member will be allowed to serve a maximum of 9 consecutive years. The member may be re-elected after 3 consecutive years of not being a committee member. On page 2, under section C, elections, the change was, let me see, a total of committee members remains at 7, with 2 members from both Bernardston and Northfield, 1 member from both Warwick and Leiden, and 1 at large. The next piece was on number 2. They're in red so that you can read them. The terms of 3 years and then 7 years for 7 members. Number 3, which was most of that, was the towns of Warwick and Leiden will each have 1 member elected for 3 years. Bernardston and Northfield will each have 1 member elected for 4 years and 1 member elected for 3 years. An at-large member elected by all 4 member towns will be elected for 4 years.
She's got one from the other president. She got one from the other side.
Yes, she got one. Sharon?
If she's done, I've got a comment. I did some researching myself this week, and I find, David, that you have not submitted all your paperwork to the town of Leiden. disclosing the fact that you are a town administrator for Warwick. So I hereby ask that you don't participate or vote this meeting. If you choose, you can get up and leave. If you try to speak, we're going to ask you to leave. Or I'm going to ask Pat to enforce that.
Well, you'd be wrong, because I did to all 4 towns, and I have a receipt from your town clerk. If they misfiled it, that's too bad, but I have the email record.
And I checked with the towns today, and nothing from the selectmen or the town clerk. So
Well,
I'm
that-
going by
that's
what
part of
our
your
people say.
ignorance, is that I don't need an exemption. I need disclosure, which I have done.
No, you haven't enlightened.
I have.
Okay, I think that because we don't have clear, we have two different people that are saying 2 different things. You, Jim?
My experience is that there's no 20D at Bernardston Clerk.
There is no 20D, there's a 20C, sir. I am an elected official who, prior to election, held appointed office. There is no permission getting, there is only disclosure. It matters the order in which this happens. You may serve in as many elected capacities as the voters will elect you. You may hold only one appointed office unless you're in a small town and get an exception. But if you already hold an appointed office and you are subsequently elected, it is simple disclosure. And it is a 20C, not 20D. My stuff was all reviewed by Warwick Town Council. It was submitted 3.5 years ago when I was first elected, and it was resubmitted 2 years ago, or whenever I was re-elected. So I met with the town clerk in Bernardston, Northfield, Bernardston, and Leiden, all got it by email. They all acknowledged it.
The fact still remains that our select board and our town clerk have said that you haven't done it. And so therefore, acting on that, I would ask Pat to uphold the recommendation.
David, do you have those emails?
Well, for that matter, John can stand down because he hasn't had his exception approved. So,
Yes, he has.
no, he hasn't, not in Warwick.
I've submitted my 20D form.
You submitted it, it has not been approved.
It's okay. I'm working with the Ethics Commission. I'm perfectly legal.
Well, and I have submitted mine, and there's no exception involved. So call the Ethics Commission on me. I'm sure 1 or 2 of you already have. Just go nuts. You can probably get frequent flyer miles.
I just feel like we're not being very trustworthy. And, you know, it's very easy for emails to get lost, especially as many as each of the towns get. Do you have the receipt of those with you by any chance, David? You said...
I get about 1,000 emails a week.
Okay,
No, I'm not carrying them.
I asked, that's all. Yeah, sure.
I just thought we should go back to Deb, because we didn't,
It was just information.
I was a little confused. I mean, I think if a citizen came to us with this, which is what we're bringing it up under, we would ask them to have it put on the agenda so that the whole committee could be aware of this and not blindsided by the scope of these changes.
Well, I think, I was going to address Deb on it too. I think the Heart Committee is working on this, and I think this is something that we need to turn into the Heart Committee to be working on, and I understand that it's too late to have it put on a number of the warrants of this year, for this town meeting. And
It first has to go to the select boards.
so
It doesn't go to the Heart Committee, it goes to the select board, so.
Can I make a point of information?
Yes.
Opening and closing a warrant applies only to articles by petition. A select board can put something on the warrant, provided it meets the 7-day notice requirement or the 14-day for a special town meeting.
I didn't know that. I've heard from Northfield that said that this couldn't be put on the warrant, that's all I know.
It's not a matter of could, it can. It's a matter of whether a select board will grant that permission.
All right, I'm not going to speak on that.
I just go back to the,
Did you get this?
That's what I was going to,
okay.
go
I heard
ahead.
about it, but I haven't
So,
seen it.
with regard to disclosures, I know that it has looked like you have to go to every town, but Pam is the district keeper of the records. So really, what is really important is when you do make a disclosure, you need to make it to her, because she's the one that's the district,
Well, the 23 Bs go to Pam. The 20 Ds go to the town clerk. They're very specific
And the
about that.
20 Cs go to the town clerk.
okay, sorry.
Mine also went to the Ethics Commission.
So what I am wondering is if, since we have two different sides of what's happening, if we can get from the three people that are always the ones that we pick on for not having their disclosure or whatever, could we get copies or some indication from Jim and John and David that all their information is into the town clerks, and we can get that by our next meeting? It's not fair to pick on one person, and if we have three people, I think that we need to get that from everybody. And I believe those are the only ones that are involved, am I right? Sharon was, but she resigned. Yes, Sharon?
I still think that because three people were exempted from staying in the room, voting, or having any part of a committee meeting is discrimination if you don't do it the same way. And the town has said they don't have it.
Sharon,
Excuse me, Sharon, I believe the three of you were not at the part of the meeting when we were voting on monies that would directly affect you. Please, Sharon.
No.
That's what I recall, because you didn't have to be out for the other parts.
You're wrong.
no, that was.
Oh, you?
All right, so let's vote on this, because I think there's two different sides, and I think that's the only equal way to do it.
Town of Leiden's right here.
They're able to speak if they want.
I couldn't verify anything tonight, because we didn't bring our minutes with us, or I don't know what the date was, or I don't know who called for the information, or, so, there's no way that we could
Okay. Sharon?
verify anything tonight.
I called Bob Hardesty today, and he said he couldn't find any information at all, going back to 2016. And I checked with Nicole, she has nothing. Town clerk.
Who'd you check with in Bernardston?
Excuse me?
Who'd you check with in Bernardston?
The town clerk.
Paul Luther.
So, I mean, I don't know what to do. What's the committee going to do on this? Yes, Sue?
I think you should take it under advisement.
I just want to say that I'm going to make an assumption that everyone at this table has acted in good faith, and that we may have a misunderstanding, but that we shouldn't be having this discussion without the evidence present and without clear information. So I know it's sort of crazy hot right now, but we have a lot of work to do and a lot of important people waiting for us to get our work done. So I would suggest we get the evidence clear for our next meeting and try to get to our agenda tonight and understand that everybody has strong feelings about this and we have some things to clear up.
Everybody shaking their head without doing a formal vote? Yes, no? Except for Sharon, and I'm sorry.
I hear the feelings, I
I
just think we can't
definitely-
clear it up in this environment, in this way. We have to wait and get some clarity.
Funny how you could do it back, a few months back.
Well, that was a tricky
It was quite
night,
nice
wasn't
to
it,
kick us
Sharon?
all out of the room.
I know,
That's
we-
direct discrimination, and I'll tell you right now, if you don't do something tonight,
Well, Sharon, we had a lot of lawyers present. There was a lot of pressure in that
So?
meeting. It was a destabilizing experience for all of us in many ways. This is us, and we have to
So?
work together. So let's get the information we need and
I
try to
did.
get our work done.
I did.
Well, but you don't have any evidence, Sharon. We have people saying things to you on the phone. This is something we're gonna need documentation and
Who
clarity
had
for.
evidence before when we had the meeting?
Sharon,
The opinion, the reason why you were excluded, as I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that our attorney said
No.
that, okay,
keep going, Pat. Keep finishing your sentence.
that our attorney said that, because they didn't quite understand whether, I can't remember whether the documentation was in or not, that you couldn't be there. What was it? Because I
Actually,
truly
was
can't
silent.
I
remember.
believe the attorney said, you're taking a risk if you stay here.
Okay.
And if you were right, I'm taking a risk if I stay here.
Okay, I couldn't remember the particulars.
He really said not much of anything, the attorney.
And that was a really regrettable, blindsided moment, and but maybe we should take the higher road this time and look at it, make sure we have everything in front of us at the next meeting.
All right, will you come forth with that information, the three of you?
Definitely.
All right, and then we will have that on our thing as our first thing. There are minutes of our last meeting, our last two meetings that are in front of us. I'll look at the February 1 first. At reviewing these, did anyone have anything that we need to change?
Strong feelings and- Oh, the minutes.
Sorry.
Let's see.
All right.
Okay.
Is there anything anybody could see?
Is Megan here?
She is
Megan?
here.
Okay.
Oh, yes, he's there.
She's back
Okay.
there.
She's hiding.
Megan, my only thought about, which minutes are we talking about?
The February 15th ones?
Right here.
The,
Okay.
Right.
I didn't have a thought about those. I had a question about a different one. Yeah,
Okay.
never mind.
so does anyone care to make a motion to accept these?
Make a motion to accept February 15 minutes.
All right. And a
Second.
second? All right. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Oh, sorry, I had to abstain on this meeting.
Okay. With one abstention. And the second thing is the March 15th, 1 month later.
All right, this is where I had a question, Megan.
Okay.
In the part where you are speaking, I wasn't sure if it was clear what you were saying. I don't know, did you read the, you don't have the minutes? Okay. Let's see. It's on the first page at the bottom. It says, reduced staff by 1, added teacher in August. And I just was, in one line, we're talking about a reduction and an adding, and it wasn't really clear.
So I'm not sure if this is the place that the question was raised.
I think,
about the
yeah,
staffing.
I don't know.
So we had in the previous, for the FY18 budget, reduced 1 teaching staff member based on our projected enrollment.
Yeah,
But then we had about 20 new
Okay.
students unexpectedly enroll over the summer and
all
then had to hire.
right. So
another
that is
teacher.
accurate. Okay, it just sounded funny to me. I was
Yes.
like, okay.
I believe it's
Thank
accurate.
you.
Great.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Martha? For those present, Sharon and I were left off the list on March 15th,
We can't have that.
and we were both there.
So we need to amend those couple places. Is there anything else further in the minutes? When I looked through, I didn't see anything. I didn't even catch the your name up there, so.
Yeah, I always enter my own name.
Hey, why not? We gotta do it. Okay, is there a motion to accept as printed or as corrected?
I move we accept as presented,
As corrected.
as corrected.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Abstain.
Oops, one abstention.
She wasn't here.
Peggy was not here. She had flown away. Flown the coop. The accounts payable are on the light purple. Okay, expenditure report should be here somewhere. Yep, it's here on the darker purple. We will probably look over these when we're speaking on the budget, so we'll put those aside. Warrants are going to be circulating, and we were asked if we would move the discussion of the budget vote ahead. Is that something the committee would like to do, or do you want to proceed with the agenda as printed?
Oh, I think of students here. No, I don't want to make them sit for 2 hours.
Don't worry about that.
They
That's okay, we don't have school tomorrow.
They don't have school
so
tomorrow.
not a big
Oh,
deal.
wow, okay.
All the time in the world.
Okay, Peg, you're always taking it.
I'd like to hold the budget too.
Okay, what's everybody's thought?
Move it ahead.
I'd like
We
to
need a
go-
motion.
Yeah, why not?
We need a-
I prefer to do the way the agenda reads.
Yes? All right, we'll follow through then. The revenue report was provided for January and February. Ruth, do you want to explain that, or?
Pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Okay.
Regarding the email yesterday with the revenue or in the June note and not being able to pay the June note, is that something that can you address that, please?
Sure. The budget's really tight because it always is, and we, really very strictly monitoring it. We have an assessment in June from the towns, and that assessment will be able to cover the outstanding $1.2 million revenue anticipation note. And so it is tight this year, and it was tight last year, as many of you remember that we tried to pay our retiree health early so that we get a discount. So the revenue anticipation note will get paid first, but we're watching the budget closely because it is very, very tight.
Is it due on the 30th of June, or when is it?
I believe it's the 28th.
And the revenue from the town should be in before that?
Should be in before that, yes.
And if it's not? I mean, that's
No,
cutting it.
well, I'm hoping that the towns will give it, they're usually really, really good about giving us the money on time. What it might be is that we might have to hold some, some payables back.
Because this
until-
sounds really scary if if we don't pay that note on time, like
It
last
is.
year, 2 years in a row.
Well, we did pay it, that's a different story. Yeah, it is a big deal. It is a big deal. The Department of Revenue looks at that, and if you default on that, then you're not going to be able to take out another revenue anticipation note. And typically, we would pay this off in June and take another one off in September. And basically, it's not a revenue anticipation note, it's really about a cash flow problem. That's essentially how we've been using it because we have cash flow issues. But I thought you should know, what the ramifications are if for some reason we do not make that payment.
That's the scary part.
It's very scary, and that's why we have to really live very closely to our budget lines. We do the best we can.
So I have been calling around, talking to a lot of people, because this is very concerning to me.
Sue got an email the beginning of the week that stated that we were having a problem and probably would not be able to pay this from Ruth. I got one, or the committee got one a couple days later that said, no problem, we've got the money, it's just a cash flow problem. In the meantime, I've done some talking to about every agency that helps us out throughout the state. I started with MASC, I went to DOR, I went to the Department of Education, I went to the Regional School Association, and I spoke to the Division of Local Services. If everybody remembers Mary Jane Handy that was up here and spoke to us, I spoke to her. She said, Ruth, that you were going to send figures into her the beginning of the end of last week, and she has not yet received them. Have you sent those in?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. Because as of this morning, she hadn't received them, she said.
Well, I submitted them to Terry Williams, who is our rep for the Department of Local Services. He got them right away.
Great, good. Well, she hadn't received them, and that's where I was coming from. So when I was talking today to the Rural School Association, I heard what would happen and what we need to do if this loan isn't paid on time. They will assign us an overseer, which will cost us about $43,000 to pay this overseer on top of the money that we owe, and probably there was no indication of interest, but I would imagine that might be included also. And it just seems really frightening to me that one more time we're on the same route as we were on last year. And I don't know what to do at this point. I don't know how other people feel. But every time I turn around, I'm getting other answers, and it's David.
A revenue anticipation loan is a cash flow loan. We would be lucky if our problem was cash flow. Our problem really is $1 million of accumulated losses, $300,000 in the last year, and this can't continue. I mean, the timing of this loan payment is such that we're going to have to forego a significant discount on prepayment of our retirement annual contribution. So we will effectively be paying, interest on that.
Do you have any idea what that amount is?
I think it's amounts to around $7,000. But our underlying problem is that we have a $250,000 school lunch debt. We have had under the most recent audit another $300 and something thousand of accumulated losses, and then as a consequence of the layoffs, we did not properly impute the termination costs. Our employees are able to accumulate 140 sick days. That's almost a year's worth of pay that we would have to buy out at the end. And we've got that in incredibly large liability. We've got to right size. That's all there is to it. Right size or go out of business. But we cannot pursue this. We've got we got 760 kids. That would be a small high school, but we're a K through 12 school on 5 campuses. We're in a tough way, and it's going to take radical change.
Comments? Bob?
Have all the teachers' pays that have paid off over the 26 weeks, all that money's been encumbered?
For this year?
Yeah.
Yes.
You anticipated what other expenses you're gonna have? That's what we're worried about, right? Well, expenses other than that we might have over the summer?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the last couple of years, but without the layoffs, but we look at the budget, we're really tight. The thing is, we use every penny of our budget. So we have, what, $10,000 left on a $14 million budget. That's usually not what you want to be at, but we basically have funded the staffing portion, and we continue to cut, and because the staff's the most important thing that we have. And so typically, if we had, more revenue, or we had a budget that was larger, we would save a portion of it. But where we, got ourselves in a spot where we were in a deficit, it's really hard to grow out of that, and especially with the declining enrollment. So it's not, it's not impossible, but I think there just needs to be really a thoughtful plan. We can keep doing this, but eventually it's not going to work unless we think of other ways to stabilize the financial district. I just, I don't know.
Michelle?
David, I'd like a clarification on the buyouts. It's my understanding it's a percentage of 160, depending on how long you've been there. The other thing is, why isn't this budgeted when you're anticipating this budget? How many people less you're going to have? That's how you do a budget. You look at, who you may be laying off. You look at how long they've been there, what amount of time they have, and that's what's put into the budget. So I don't think all these people were paid 160 days. I mean, if that's the case, we better be looking at benefits when we do the contracts also. I mean, none of this is sustainable.
Correct.
It's not sustainable, and so we have to put our heads together to try and figure this out. And this is exactly what the Heart Committee is doing, because there's not a lot of movement here, and we're down to the wire. We need information to go to our budget, to our towns. Our warrants are closing. And it shouldn't be impacting our children. You can get rid of administrative costs here. I have a lot of data here that I think you better start looking at administrative costs also, and not just teachers.
Yes, sir?
The budget feels separate to me. I know it's all connected because it's all money, but I want to try to clarify the note process.
Yes.
I have had trouble all through the year, even trying to follow the budget carefully to understand where we actually are at any given time. I know the school lunch thing is obvious. Then when we came in the summer, you said there's an unexpected special ed transportation cost that we're going to have to absorb. But at the time you said, but that's okay, we're going to save money on our health insurance for the people we don't have. So I didn't really worry about that too much. So it's unusual for me to ever see an overall financial picture for us. I didn't know we were borrowing to that degree. And it's confusing to hear different opinions on how much I should be concerned about this. So again, as a school committee member, I feel responsible and yet not fully versed in sort of the role. But I also just wanted to say, I think also part of our, and I just want to clarify, is part of our problem, and is this only for next year and not for this year, that our enrollment went down so much that our school aid went down? Is that impacting us next year, not this year?
It's impacting us this year and
This year and next year,
Yeah,
okay.
both.
Okay. It's a bit of a perfect storm, isn't it?
Yeah.
It truly is. Just to qualify something, before I got here, they were taking out 1.6, 1.7 revenue anticipation notes, and I backed it down to 1.2 because they felt like it was just too easy to have that money floating out there. And the treasurer and I talked about it, and she thinks that we would be able to sustain an $800,000 revenue anticipation note instead to wean us off. So that's
in the
what-
future.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about doing down the road. But again, you know, we don't have a tremendous amount of reserve.
Martha?
So, does the revenue anticipation loan now and in the past, does it regularly come at this time of year, at the end of the year?
Always. Has to be
That's
paid off in
because-
June.
Okay.
It's a DOR thing.
And that's because of the schedule of the payment from the towns, or is it?
No, it's
other-
mandated by the Department of Revenue. If you take out a revenue anticipation note, anytime in the year, it has to be
Right, I
paid
know
off.
that, but
June.
the anticipated revenue is because we don't have the payments from the towns, or some of the Chapter 70 money, or, you know what I mean? Like, why are we short? I guess is basically what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, because we're spending all our money in June, right? And so we have that assessment, then the next assessment doesn't come in until September.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So it's a matter of timing then.
It's timing, yeah.
So I just need clarification. Are we going to be able to make this payment? And if so, how? Where is the money coming from?
So it would be the town's assessments that they pay in June. That dollar amount would more than enough cover the anticipation note. However, there might be bills that we just don't pay, which is not as severe as not paying that note.
Which is actually
As long
sort
as
of
they're not
illegal,
paychecks.
isn't it?
Huh?
I didn't hear it, David.
As long as they're not paychecks or federal tax
Right, right.
escrow payments and some of the crazy places that people try to take loans when they get desperate because they don't have enough income. That's us. We don't have enough net income. We're losing money. It irks me to be talking about revenue anticipation. That says cash flow. We don't have a cash flow problem. We're miles beyond that. We got an income problem. We're borrowing, so think about it. We got almost $1 million in deficit, school lunch program, everything else. We're a $14, $15 million company. The bigger you are, especially if you're not growing, the easier it is to just let the float take care of it and just start paying bills more and more slowly. There's enough cash washing through here, $15 million a year. You can, I mean, it's a lot of work, but you can move the chess pieces around and sort of cover things. But then we get to this need to pay off this note once a year because it's short-term borrowing. And it's by its terms, it needs to be paid off once a year. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in June, but that's when we need it worst. But we've got an income problem. And if we don't look for cuts, we're just going to blow that up.
I do have a question. For my own information, I want to know how many years this loan has been taken out to the school district. How far back does this procedure go? Because that's where the trouble started. And there's no sense in looking at history. You guys got to start thinking into the future and getting problems solved today. We spend so many hours sitting here listening to stuff that happened in ancient times that don't matter anymore, except that you need the cure.
All right, so we've discussed that. Shall we move on? All right.
So where are we moving? Where are we?
We are our school lunch program.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, sure.
I would just like to know from this board, some of you have been on the board for a long time, how many of you knew about this loan before last year? How many of you?
I think we knew about
I
it.
heard about it at one point, but I didn't investigate it.
I never knew.
I assumed it was
Every year,
standard
but not
procedure.
paying it is another.
Yeah,
I mean, we authorized borrowing in anticipation at the beginning of every year.
Right. That's
I
just
never knew the amount or when it happened. It was never brought to us and,
No, it was never brought to us.
it was paid, and so it was just never.
until last year's problem.
Right.
I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean,
Good thing there was a problem,
I don't think so.
it becomes a problem if it's not paid.
I don't think so. All right, so, school lunch. Yeah.
The report is enclosed and also included in the report, in addition to the traditional regular food service audit review from the DESE, we also had a comprehensive financial review, of which I had to answer the corrective action plan for and turn that in last week. Two of the most important, or the two recommendations that you as school committee members need to be aware of are also included with the school lunch report. One of them is that, and I gave you copies of this, it states the food service director position is actually a collateral duty of the assistant superintendent, which not surprisingly does not allow business sense, but that's how it's written. He wrote it. For the required focus and follow-up given the continual expanding requirements of the program, it is highly recommended that the SFA consider, the SFA is Pioneer Valley Regional School District, consider hiring a full-time food service director to manage the program going forward, or if possible, consider sharing food service director with the nearby district to minimize costs. Certainly would be my recommendation also. This person, his name is Peter McLaughlin. He's the head of the finances at the DESE that does all the financial reviews for anyone in the state that has a financial food service review. The second recommendation is an email that I asked him to explain, so he would give you the wording in speaking of the debt, the deficit debt for food lunch that has accumulated since before I was here. And clearly there needs to be something taken care of, and then I let the treasurer read his response so you could get some information in regards to what her recommendation is. So that's there also for your knowledge base and to help make decisions about what to do.
Oh, yeah.
So Gil Montague, superintendent, reached out to me. He was putting in an ad for a food service director and asked if we wanted to go in with him. And I said, of course we do. And Gail went over and met with Michael, and he had the whole ad pretty much out, right? Correct? It had already been out there.
I know the business manager and Michael, and they had already advertised, so they reached out after they had advertised and asked us to come over. So I went over just to talk to them because they needed some food service knowledge-based information, and because I do that, I could give that to them. And we calculated with the help of the business manager and Gil Montague that it would cost approximately $76,000 to share a food service director if the person made approximately, give or take $50,000, 25% for retirement, and then their insurance. So that would be $76,000 total. So it would, the districts, should you decide to pursue this, would have to decide what percentage, is it 50-50, is it 60-40, and come up with parameters. And they gave me the job description that they used when they advertised. So that's a decision that, the committee will have to make. But they're moving forward with it, hopefully to either share or pursue on their own.
And if I understand right, that is not in the budget as of today.
Well, it would go in the food service
Right.
line, which is already
Right.
overdrawn.
Right.
Can I ask Gail a question? Or
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
is there anyone within our district that would be able to fulfill the role of food service director?
Good question. And the answer is no. And my recommendation would be, I'll give you the legal aspect of it. Starting in 2015,
anyone who's hired for that position or it's advertised, you have to look for someone who has a nutritional degree. And the DOE has lots of information, and I certainly could get more for you. But there is no one in the district who has an advanced degree in nutrition. Should I have been hired into the district after 2015, I would not have been able to do that job if someone gave it to me. But I'm grandfathered in, so to speak, for terminology to make it understandable. But my comment was going to be that we thought last year that there were people in the district who could take on more than they did this year. We did cut staffing last year. We're very, and you've heard this from me over and over again, we're very conscientious about everything that we do. We can't dig ourselves out of $260,000. Everyone in the cafeteria presently who has any position is maxed out, and they have taken on more and more. They work beyond their hours voluntarily, some of them, and I would not recommend or suggest that anyone say they have to do any more.
The only other thing to add is that I had a conversation with our treasurer, and she was, because she had been talking to the same person Gail was talking to, and she was suggesting, and we didn't finish the conversation or get to a point where we would make a decision, but she was thinking that we should take the food service deficit and put it all in the general fund and leave the food service the way it is, because technically you shouldn't be carrying a deficit there. So that was a conversation, short conversation with the treasurer. So we are having those conversations to figure out how we're going to move forward. But with the work that Gail's done, it's we're in good shape to partner with somebody if in fact that can work out. It seems like in the budget we have $50,000 for we had set aside for food lunch, food service, or extra. Maybe we would have to use some of that to pay for the part-time person. I don't know, but that's down the road when we get a little more information.
I saw a hand up back there, but yeah, Jeff.
I'm just wondering why the school committee doesn't make a recommendation to the towns, remit this deficit issue back to the towns and let them bring it up to the town meeting on the floor, whatever it is. It's obvious that the school committee seems that they can't figure this issue out. I mean, there's a cash flow problem, and you're going to run into the same problem next year. We're going to be sitting here, everybody's going to be sitting in the room next year, and we're going to be deliberating the same issue again. I mean, Bob brought this up 2 years ago, and now we've dug ourselves into a hole, like Gail said. We're into it for $250, $260.
It'll be free by the end of the year.
No.
And it might be more next year. I mean,
I thought Ruth, you were going to write an article for the town warrants.
I did. I wrote 3 of them.
Oh, you did, okay. So the 3 towns should have them.
When I'm looking for my emails, I can probably find those too.
All right, that would be good. So the 3 towns should have that. Did Leiden not get theirs?
I didn't see anything come through.
Yes, you have.
Northfield's shaking their head.
When did you sign it?
Bob, have you seen anything?
2 months ago.
I got it, but there were also some together. But all the towns got it. The administrative assistants got it.
You have to come up with a plan to keep it out, though.
Right.
I'm not willing to put it forward to pay for it if you don't have a clue how you're going to keep it away.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be able to fix the problem, and then
Taxes.
The school committee, though, should have come up with a single article for each town warrant. That's what we asked for.
That's what I
Bernardston
thought.
can't present it to Northfield. Hey, Northfield, this is what we think. We can't present it to Leiden. You guys have got to come up with an article to go on each town warrant. And I don't even know if there's time left. Maybe if you get it out tomorrow, that's what we talked about last week.
it's the same thing as like when you put out that technology loan, 3 years ago for $400,000 or whatever it was. It came out as a capital, whatever it was, and you went out and you took out a loan for that money, and we've been paying, I think this is our last year, we're paying it back. It would be the same thing for the school lunch program. It would take 2 to 3 years to pay it back. But it would probably correct some of your cash flow problems here. Because right now, you're not dealing with a
I
with
don't
a
borrow
fair
against
checkbook.
losses is a
Yeah.
borrowable expense.
Yeah, I don't think you can borrow against a deficit. It's mismanagement of a budget.
The point I had my hand up to make is that we've got an opinion here from someone from DESE in the food service who says that you don't have from his program, I'm not concerned with your school lunch deficit. You don't have one from our perspective because you paid the bill. You got the money from somewhere. So his suggestion would be that essentially we failed to recognize, we failed to book it correctly. I don't think you'd get the same answer at Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services. I think our books have that deficit, kind of like an enterprise fund deficit, and we need to address it. It's a priority that we can't keep sweeping into the corner. The question is how fast we have to come back from this. But I'm not at a point where I feel comfortable saying to a town, subsidize this. The only point I could make in terms of this article is that it would be a supplemental appropriation for a specific purpose. It would be over and above the above minimum contribution, and we will be handcuffed to use the money for that purpose and no other purpose. And given the performance of the school committee, I'd recommend that kind of stricture.
Sue has her hand up first.
I think that it's become clear to me over the course of this year that with the changes that Gail has made, we are no longer constantly digging a hole in our food services process. And in the coming budget, we've put in $50,000 to cover the expenses of that program, which we didn't used to have in our general budget, right? So we've made those significant changes. Now we have to clean up the debt, but we also have to hire someone to run the program because Gail is retiring, right? So that's sort of a simple to-do list, right? Gail's done a lot of good work. Now we have a new process. My final question around it is the last time we talked, Gail, the man that came from Boston was helping you set up a new accounting system because I've been struggling with how do you track the income and expenses for the food services program in an ongoing way so that you know how you're doing. And you had suggested he had some ideas, and I was wondering if that new system was going to be in place by the time you left.
I don't know if I'd call it a new system.
Mm-hmm. Or a new accounting process?
This is the same person.
Okay.
That writes the corrective action plan, Peter McLaughlin from the DES. And he had many other suggestions in regards to cash and tracking money, and that is an ongoing process that we are trying to look at. And it will continue through the summer.
So where we never had that $50,000 in our budget before, we only showed expenses in the expenditure report, but it was not against a budgeted amount, right? I kept saying, I keep seeing all these expenses, but I have no sense of what they're what budgeted income or money we've allotted they're coming up against.
You have the revenues from, you have some of it on the lunch report.
Yeah, and I do trust that lunch report, but I can't follow it in an ongoing way. I can't see the expenditures against the money that's allotted. And that
We've been trying to forecast through the end of June. And again, it's informally taking the encumbrances, the revenues every month that we get from the state and the federal government for our food reimbursements. And the forecast is that we'll be negative $25,000. This year was 39, the year before that it was 50. So we're still in a deficit. So I don't want anybody to think that
if we've set aside $50,000 for next year and that happens, we will have been prepared for that. Right? That was the change we needed to make. And on going forward, there needs to be some kind of a reporting system so that we are watching that the whole time. Even if it's you're projecting your numbers and saying, this is my best guess. Okay, so that we're responsible. We're doing due diligence. We're saying, okay. Because right now I can't track that. All I see is money going out. So we have to clear up how to do the warrants. We may not get them all in this year. We may not get it all taken care of, right? But there's still some time for some of our towns that might be willing to help us out. We need to hire someone. I mean, there's some pretty straightforward things.
You have to hire
several positions.
Well, right, but this, I'm aware of
We're
that.
at school lunch right now.
Right, and there's a proposal to share with another district.
And they would be waiting for an answer,
Yeah.
is the message that I
Yeah.
received.
Yeah.
They would be, or they
They
are?
are
They need to hear
waiting
from us.
to see
Yeah.
if we will share
Yeah.
the food service director position that is presently advertised. It's presently advertised only for the Gilmontague district, so it would have to be re-advertised properly.
Do we have anywhere here among our materials, or could we get a copy of the job description of the food service director?
I have what they posted, which
We could
it
probably
does-
find that
it-
online.
It's been in the newspaper, and I'm sure it's on their website.
Go to their website, okay.
And it's probably on School Spring.
Wasn't sure exactly what that involved.
The food service director position is extremely complicated. It needs to be one person, whether it's one person shared by a district or one person part-time or full-time in your district, because every year the expectations from the DESE and the DOR ramp up more and more and more. And I can easily tell you that things that I did when I got here, such as meet with elementary principals every other week, that is on the back burner right now, because there are demands and deadlines that have to be met by the DESE, just in regards to the food service role that I play.
Lots and lots of paperwork and lots of oversight of staff.
You have to follow the laws.
Okay, thank you.
Gail, you've read the job description, right?
Yes,
Does it strike you as appropriate to our needs?
yes, 3 of us looked at it together. The only thing that's not there, which will have to be worked out, is the percentage or the time that is spent in each district. And there are many responsibilities that happen as a food service director that could happen when the person is on campus here or on campus at Gilmontague, but doing both districts. Because once you're in the portal, you can do both. They have a very large summer program. We don't qualify for a summer program, so that person needs to concentrate in advertising, working, and running the summer program that does not happen here. So, and I brought that to their attention. So Gail, do you have an idea how to propose sharing a position? Madam Chairperson. What would be your proposal to share that job in terms of what you think? Percentage-wise,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And we said, the 3 of us said that we really need to talk about that.
I think you go by how many meals are served. Just because they serve so many more in the guild.
We're gonna decide it soon.
Martha has her hand up.
I just wondered if the amount of work involved, as far as dividing it up, would depend more on the number of students having lunch, or would it depend on the number of schools, or both? I don't know how many schools there are.
Well, I think both. Then you want to build, it is students. If you, Holly, this is Holly Manson, the elementary food service director.
I see that.
Right, I feel like a lot of it would just be a general thing that you would do for all the schools. Some of it would be more, more for more kids, more work, but a lot of it is just, menu planning and ordering could be across the board for everybody.
I would think if the committee was interested in that, maybe we could ask Gail to try to negotiate or figure out what might work and what you think would be the criteria for the proportionate of cost, that kind of thing. I mean, we've got to start from somewhere.
Yeah.
Michelle?
I would think that Michael Sullivan and their business manager and whoever they're hiring can look at a job description and say, X amount of people are in the Gilmontague district, X amount of people are in PVRS. Sounds to me like it might be 60-40, 70-30. So why don't you just make a decision to move forward at 60-40? If you can't agree to that and you have 50,000, you got to make these decisions for next year's budget.
It is getting, it's getting very frustrated. As community people, we need to know.
Okay, Michelle, let us keep talking, please.
Okay.
Yes, Sue.
I'm trying to figure out how to make a motion that gets money in our budget that's enough to cover a number we don't understand yet, but that recognizes that we give Gail the authority to kind of negotiate for what's appropriate for the district in her role currently. I trust her to do that. Does anybody know how to formulate that motion?
I will.
You do?
Yep.
All right, tell us what it might be.
To assign the task of negotiating with Gil Montague for a shared food service director to Gail Healy. The cost to not exceed the $50,000 that we have in a line item.
So is that address?
Because we've talked about 76 total, right? So
Yeah,
even if it was,
It's an estimate.
right,
But that's
right,
the
but not to
business manager
exceed.
sitting at the table with Michael.
Exactly, exactly. I feel totally comfortable with all of that.
Good.
So moved.
All right, there's a motion, is there a second?
All right, so do we need to restate that motion, or are we good with that?
We're good with that.
All right.
Did you all hear it?
Negotiating with Gil Montague to Gail Healy and not to exceed $50,000.
Nice job.
Good.
You got it?
Very
Bill?
well.
Okay, great.
She did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna
There's a
vote.
motion, is there a second?
David seconded.
David second.
David, okay, I didn't hear that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? Passes. Okay. Another job for Gail. Another job off our plates. Okay. Now we're to the fun things. Do we have Ariel here that wants to speak to?
She actually wasn't feeling well and went home, and so she asked me to present this for her. EF Tours is a very well-known agency that takes trips for all sorts of students. They'll be going to Ireland and Scotland. As you see, you can see the whole itinerary in the actual number of students. The students have paid their own way, and I think she said there were 8 students total that would be going on this trip with her as an advisor, and I think there's 1 or 2 other people. It's over the April vacation, and they did one fundraiser to get the bus ride to the airport and back, and so that's was the total. And the kids are looking forward to it, and I would see no issue at all with approving this trip.
Okay, so that's at no cost to the school, is that correct?
No cost to the school. Well, the only cost to the school is a sub for REL because they're getting back a couple days after the trip, so it's maybe 2 days of subbing.
I move to approve.
Wait,
That's
Amy
right.
had her hand up.
Well, we can approve it. My request is that we receive this information sooner than 2 weeks before the trip.
I agree.
I think that if further trips are planned, to request a month's notice is not unreasonable. That's all.
I think this trip was originally planned 2 years ago.
Yeah, it says
Yeah,
that.
but
And
an
I just-
update
yeah.
for us sooner than 2 weeks before the trip would have been nice.
David, you moved.
I moved.
I second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, unanimous.
I wish I could go.
Me too.
Senior class trip.
For seniors.
John?
Yeah.
I'm John Schedule, teacher here at Pioneer. I'm a senior class advisor along with Kathy Mulch, and I'm here seeking approval for the 2018 senior class trip. This year would be to Ocean City, New Jersey. I've outlined, I hope you have all copies of an outline of the trip, as well as a parent contract that's going to be signed by the students and parents, outlining the rules of the trip and the consequences that would result if the students broke the rules. We would leave on Memorial Day in the morning from the school. The entire trip is is paid by the senior class fund. We asked for a $75 non-refundable deposit so we could secure students spots on the trip, because we have to make hotel reservations and know how many students are going on the bus. We anticipate, we've done quite well fundraising this year, so we anticipate actually applying the $75 per student to maybe some fun excursions for them. So essentially the cost would be nothing. We'd have 5 chaperones on the trip. Right now there's 29 students that signed up, so it's about 6 students per chaperone. They'd all be assigned to a chaperone. And I've included the transportation. We'd get a coach bus. We would have the police, and I've already talked to Heath Cummings, the resource officer here, and he's talked to the Northfield Police Department about the procedure of inspecting the students and their bags and contents before we depart for the trip. And so I've outlined that here, included the limousine transportation service, which is actually a coach bus, the hotel information, and the hotel is located about 100 yards from the 3-mile boardwalk and ocean, so everything's walkable. If we want to do an excursion, we do have extra time included with the cost of the bus to take a small side trip. And I don't know if you have questions, but you can take a look at the parent contract. We'll have a parent meeting sometime in April to review this with the parents and the students. And they must attend the meeting and sign this form, which again outlines the rules of the trip and the consequences that would come if the students broke those rules. So seeking approval for this trip.
You stated they were leaving the morning, early morning on Memorial Day. What happens to those band members that are not available that day?
I'm not 100% sure.
I mean, that seems like it would make it not possible for the band members to, they'll have to make a choice. Do they march in their last parade, or do they go on a class trip? That doesn't seem quite fair.
Right. Well, this is the time frame because the students have to be back on that Thursday, and the graduation is June 1st on Friday, and they have classes, and so this was really the only available time that was made for the trip, or allotted for the trip. I'm not sure how many band members are going on this trip. I could certainly find that out.
I don't know either. I just know that.
Yeah, I could certainly find that out and get a number. Yes.
Yes, but if you find the number of band students, it sounds like you can't change the dates for this trip.
It'd probably be tough to change the dates, right?
It's a tight window.
Yeah. I think historically it was always around this time, at least in my years here at Pioneer with my kids, because I've been on this very same trip as a chaperone.
So it's 29 out of how many?
There's around 60 seniors total. And so if somebody still wanted to join the trip, they could. But we wanted to get a number and kind of a commitment from students, so that's why we asked for the $75, because I didn't want to put deposits down on a coach bus or a hotel room and then have students just back out. So it's kind of a little bit of investment they made to secure their spot, and it gives us a little security knowing these students are going and plan on going. But if students want to come, or if students can't afford it, the $75, we've made them aware that we could certainly help them with that cost and cover the cost.
And I'm trying to remember the process. Do the kids, do they like vote on a group of ideas?
Yeah, we presented, there's a committee, and there was several ideas that went out to vote. So this was the popular vote. Second place was New York City. So this overwhelming amount of students, it was over 80% wanted to go on this particular trip.
Okay, any more discussion? Peggy?
My only other comment is,
Go for it.
when I read it at home, I thought, how sad that we have to tape the doors and that level of, I know it only takes one bad apple, and that's, we've been down that road, but we've got to bring in the drug sniffing dogs and the police to search all the bags, and we had guys from the House of Correction paint at the town hall, and I think they had more, freedom than.
I do believe there was issues 2 years ago with the trip, so we're trying to,
issues.
side on the,
The kids always
taking
know how to beat
precautions,
it. They do.
Unfortunately, this is the state of, this is where things are at these days, and
Right.
it's certainly protecting the students.
I'd like to make a motion to have these seniors go on their class trip. Approve the class
Is there a
trip.
second?
Second.
Discussion, Gail had her hand up.
I was just going to add, that this is the procedures protocol for all school districts, that there has to be a procedure.
There's been a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Have a great time. Thank you for
Okay,
doing
thank
this.
you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't forget the sunscreen.
Yeah, I'll send a postcard.
No postcard, just remember the sunscreen.
Be nice and warm.
Okay, now we have two kids that would love to tell us what's happening in school.
All right.
Make
so
it exciting.
One really great thing that's going on Saturday is the band is performing the Micah Music Festival.
Where's that?
It's in Belchertown.
Okay.
Last week, the band had a dress rehearsal where we had some special guests come, including our old band director, which was really sweet to see him and see how he's doing. And from that, we really learned a lot through the special guests, and we're really excited to see how we do on Saturday.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So Phantom of the Opera is being performed this weekend. It's going on actually right now, and it's on Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. They've been rehearsing since December or earlier, and they seem very, very excited about it. It's kind of a risky choice, but they're very excited, and it seems to be going really well. And lastly, the first round of MCAS begins for the sophomores next week, and so we have English, math, and science MCAS this year, and that's our last round of MCAS for the rest of our schooling career, so I'm pretty excited to get it started. Say it again?
That's right, too, for 10th graders.
Yep. So we start next week, and then they continue into April and May. So ELA is next week.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And congratulations to the basketball team.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't want to steal Gina's thunder, but yes. Sorry, Gina.
I just couldn't resist. Sorry, Gina. Look forward to hearing more.
We can talk about it all you want.
Yeah.
Very
It
great
was very,
games.
very exciting.
Very great games.
The recorder had a nice article on the play, but they had the times wrong in today's paper, and I don't know if there's any way to get to
Oh, yeah, it
that.
said 6 o'clock, and it
Yeah.
isn't
For what, the
designated
play?
at 7.
Well, it's
What the play is at
6 o'clock tonight,
No, it's
7 o'clock tomorrow. Okay.
I know, but you're right. the
Well,
paper
people will
said
be
6
early.
o'clock on Thursday.
That's true, better than the
Friday
other
and
one.
Saturday.
Don't
So
be
sit
late.
there and wait.
Well, you can always go to the website and see.
Better early than late.
Exactly. So yeah, 7 p.m. the next 2 days.
Great. And that's it.
And that is it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do you know ahead of time, like when the prom is and graduation?
So prom is May
activities and-
12th. That's a lot
May 12th.
for the theme of Starry Night.
And what other activities we have going on?
Other
Upcoming.
activities. I know chorus is heading off to DC in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
Band leaves the 26th. So we actually will not make it to the next school committee meeting. We will have
Oh,
left
oh.
early in the morning.
No, you have
forgive
to
you.
stay.
For our big heritage festival.
Just have a good time.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, now we have our principals'
So
reports.
what they did this month, because they knew it was a really full agenda, they gave you their reports on paper.
Oh, great.
And so, you know, unless there's something specific, we can move.
If they don't feel like they need to talk to us right
They
now,
really don't.
let's just move along.
They like, you just observe.
I mean, they knew that this was going to be a heavy meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you for typing those up. Appreciate it.
You may want to do it. Athletic director.
Yeah. She gets her time.
She was not
Best job in the world right there. So yes, obviously the boys' basketball season was an amazing ride. It was a competition between what was the best part of it, the winning the game, especially that last second shot.
Oh, I know.
Or the amount of people, the crowd, the support, it was just unbelievable. And it brought tears to your eyes to sit there, and I was doing the book, and you look up, and all you see is a sea of black in Vegas gold. And the student section was unbelievable. They all behaved themselves, which is very important to me. But it really was an amazing ride, and those kids worked their tails off, and it just, you can't like watch the video enough or talk about it enough. It was really great. So that obviously is the first thing that we want to talk about. I also want to thank the Booster Club because they sponsored a fan bus to the state semifinals. So that was pretty cool to drive a bus full down to Springfield. So that was nice. And thank the Bernardston and the Northfield fire departments because they escorted the bus, which was really cool. So they met the bus when it came from Amherst into the Northfield line, and they drove them up Route 10, and they were going to come back. The team was coming back to Pioneer to cut the net, and I forgot my keys at home, so I zipped home and got my keys, and then I was zipping back, and I was coming through Bernardston, and I look up, and I see a fire truck and a bus, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I like cut in line, and I guess because I was the AD, they let me. So it was just really cool, like the fire truck, the siren was going, the lights were going, and people were lined up. It was like celebrity status. It was pretty cool. That's awesome. So, that's the basketball thing. We also had some really exciting other stuff going on. In indoor track, Scott McDonough finished second at the Division 5 states in the long jump, so that was very exciting. And then he went on to the all states and finished overall 14th. So he did very well, represented Pioneer very well in that event. We had several all-stars. In basketball, we had Olivia Rowe. In girls basketball and boys, we had Garrett Cody and Jordan Loftman.
And Brendan Iman.
I'm sorry?
Was Brendan Iman?
No.
No.
Garrett Cody and Jordan. The two. And then indoor track was Sydney Unitas, AJ Wilson, Gavin Curtis, Scott McDonough, Jake Kelton, and Jake Wallace for indoor track. So that was exciting. They always have every year, it's a senior game. It's an all-star senior game that you can hear it on the radio. And Elizabeth Lambert represented Pioneer on that game. And Mike Menard, Jordan Loftman, and Brendan Emond represented Pioneer in the boys game. And then Brendan gets it's a very high honor that he gets to play, I think it's tomorrow night, down at the Hall of Fame. He gets to play in the Hall of Fame All-Star game. So that's really exciting for him. And then this week's exciting thing was Garrett Cody was up for the Mass Live Athlete of the Week. And so every single computer in the building was turned on, and kids were refreshing their pages all the time and voting and voting and voting. At lunchtime, we got the update, and he was in very tight competition with a student from Pope Francis. And so Garrett pulled out the victory again at the last second, and he was named Mass Live Athlete of the Week. So that was very exciting. So my spring sport report, we have all the coaches that we need. We had our last hire today for boys track, and our numbers in girls and boys track are very strong. We have 28 and 28, so those numbers are very strong, and once the play is over, I think we'll get a few more, so that'll be good. Baseball, our numbers at the JV varsity level are fairly low. We have 12 total right now. But our middle school numbers are 24, so that's huge. So we are looking to move up those players. The coach will be observing practices on Monday, holding tryouts on Tuesday, just to make sure that those kids can handle playing at that next level. Softball isn't quite as dire, but they have 20 at the JV varsity, and we have 12 at middle school. So we're going to kind of move kids around a little bit so that we can keep our 3 levels. So we'll have our 3 levels, which is always good. It was a hard decision to make, especially with the softball, because if you put 20 at the varsity, there's a lot of kids who are never going to get some playing time. So we wanted to make sure that we got some equal playing time for those kids. So that's my report.
All right.
It was a fun
Any
winter.
questions?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Been a good year.
I'm gonna take these.
Gee, we thought you were going to leave it for us. Thanks, Gina. Heart Committee. Michelle, are you speaking to that? Is Sue speaking to it? Is Bill?
Or Bill, Bill's our rep.
Bill's your
No.
rep?
Could speak.
So we met last week. Ooh, I didn't bring my notes from it. No. Oh yeah, the event there's a big event Saturday at GCC with a lot of Franklin County schools, a lot of Western Mass schools. Paul Mark hosting that, or helping to MC it, I guess.
Is it 9 or 9:30?
9.
It starts at 9 and it goes till 12:30. We've invited superintendents and school committee members and other appointed and elected municipal leaders. It's really a sort of a working group. It's not an open public meeting so much. So that's, we're hoping to sort of clarify some of our rural school challenges and collaborate on some solutions together. So we're very excited about that. It has great potential. We have several speakers. We'll learn a lot about our common challenges related to rural schools. You want to say anything else, Michelle?
Well, we're hoping for this to be a meeting with actionable items that Hallmark could bring before the legislature. It's not just a meeting to just sit around and talk about the problems, but really come up with some actionable items. One of the things that we've been talking about, I think this is a great example, is sharing the food service with another district. I mean, everyone will hear about all the reports that Auditor Bump put out with recommendations going forward for rural schools. We have the Franklin County 2020 Vision Report that superintendents in 2009 met with Stan Rosenberg, Linda Dunleavy, Bob Pura. You'll hear the results about that. We got Mike Buonaconti talking about his proposals. So this is more of an actionable meeting, and you know, we might have another one to follow up after that. But we have to bring proposals forward to the legislature because of the financial situations we're in.
Yeah, Martha?
So I watched the video of the rural school district presentation at Mohawk. How is this different or the same, this meeting?
So that
The
meeting
actionable part?
was to discuss a report that was the Department of Education conducted at the request of the legislature to look at the challenges for rural schools. So that's one report, one piece of the puzzle, one piece of the picture. And Superintendent Buonaconti's proposal for scarcity aid for rural schools is one proposal and one piece of the picture. It's also, it's just one of many pieces of information we're all trying to digest to understand where we are and where to go forward. And that was more of an information session with a short discussion at the end. We're hoping this will be more of a working experience where we'll actually come out of it with some plans going forward.
Is there anything else for the Heart Committee?
And I know some people are thinking, you know, how come we can't come? The Heart Committee is going to be having stakeholder meetings about our rural school challenges, and there will be lots of time for teachers and parents and students and other community members to engage with the committee around their ideas also and their concerns. So I just want to make sure we're really aware of that need.
So as a school committee member, was I supposed to register my attendance?
You were supposed to have gotten a save the date Evite. Did you get one of those?
No, I don't think so.
That's surprising to me.
I got one.
Pat
I'll
got
have to
one?
look back.
Okay. They were sent out quite a while ago, but they were resent very recently.
We may resend it tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
So
What,
is there so I should have responded to that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Recent-
But you know what? Even if you didn't get it and didn't respond, please just come. What we did was, it's a large list. If you take all of Franklin County and you're looking at all those, it's like a 200-person list. So we had some help from FreeCog to sort of upload lists, and they may not have been fully up to date or accurate. But certainly, I would hope we would have all gotten an invitation. It is being held in that big, beautiful meeting room at GCC?
Near the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Mary?
If it's a 200-person list, you might want to look in your junk mail, because those kinds of things get flagged, and then you want to make it not junk, so you'll get them in the future.
So if school committee members didn't get them, they might be in their junk mail? Yeah.
And it didn't say from PVRS either, so, nor did it say from the Hart Committee. I've forgotten what it said from.
Hallmark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
confusing.
So in other words, if you didn't get the invitation, don't feel you're not invited, right?
Absolutely. It went out to select boards, school committee, superintendents, finance committees.
And if you're not signed up, it doesn't make any difference.
That's right, you can
Right.
sign in when you come.
I see your hand back there.
So I actually came tonight with a question that you might be answering, but I know there's a Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, and when I go to their website, I don't see Pioneer Valley Regional School District as a member of that organization. Are we?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Before that,
If you look at their, well, if you look at their website, which I did today, scroll down, so that just makes me feel better. Thanks, that answers my question. And then how is what you guys are doing in Heart Committee, which sounds fabulous, how does that dovetail with the Mass Association of Regional School Districts? How is it the same, how is it different?
So I'm just getting to know that organization. So I really can't answer the question. Maybe someone that knows them better can.
Well, the Hart Committee is just this district, just this school district. So that would be-
She's talking about the nature of their advocacy work, I think.
But what the meeting that you guys were having on Saturday seems to be similar to other meetings that this association also is having. So I'm just curious.
Oh, you're talking not regional schools, but rural schools.
It's the Massachusetts Association of Regional School Districts.
So what that is that they support all the regional school districts in the state. And basically, they give you, there's a lot of trainings they do. They have, they'll come out and help you with a problem. So they're specifically focused on helping the individual districts with whatever concerns they might have, because we don't really have a lot of other people to go to for that kind of thing.
I'm just, so then I come back to the question of why Pioneer's not listed on that site as a member. So
Let's just be an oversight, because we paid for it and we've been a member for a while.
It's because it's at the very, very, very bottom of the page and it's cut off.
Okay.
So Mary just found it.
And, it's interesting, there is a lot of regional schools are also rural schools. So there's a dovetail there that, sort of a common cause.
Okay, so we'll move on from the Heart Committee to the update on the superintendent and business manager positions, and a discussion after that. It was supposed to have been posted on Friday, and it wasn't posted till this afternoon. The open position for an interim superintendent and a business manager was posted on MASC website. And the deadline for applications is the 10th of April, with the 10th of May being that the decision would be made by the 10th of May. So that means in the month that after we receive the applications, we're gonna have to be busy because there'll be a lot of work to do.
We did advertise in-house.
And we did advertise in-house, correct. We're awaiting to hear, on a business manager position, we understand that it has to be a certified school business manager, but if we have no school business managers applications that are certified as a school business manager, where we go from there. And we've got to wait for the answers for that, so I really know what we're doing. I have gotten 2 people from in-house that have applied for the superintendent's position. And I think it's 2 that I've received, these are all email ones, from people outside of the district that are applying for the interim superintendent position. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to just wait until we get all the applications and then go on? Kathy, I see your hand up.
I would just like to ask, you mentioned an organization, retired superintendent's organization that you...
No, Massachusetts Association of School Committees.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there a reason why we're not advertising on School Spring?
It was recommended not to.
So I would counter that with when you go on School Spring, although it's not flooded with advertisements for those higher level positions, they certainly are on that website.
It was just recommended not to, so
I think that the recommendation might have been just for the superintendent job, which is not typical, but School Spring with the business manager job, there's quite a few of them on there.
I can do it. I just didn't because it was recommended not to.
Give it to Pam, she'll do it for you.
Suggestions from the committee? Yes.
I just wondered, the resumes will be reviewed first by the search committee, I assume?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the whole committee will be presented.
And that consists of Jim and John and Peg and myself.
And I may have misunderstood, but I felt that we were sort of the superintendent search process committee.
Yes.
And that we've always included
everybody,
a staff or parent,
a
little broader, and I don't feel comfortable.
I don't either.
Not including.
How does other people feel? Jim, John?
I'm fine with the way it is.
Then maybe we can get the 4 of us together and talk out what we want to do to make it work.
But I would like to speed it up. I don't want to wait until we get all of the resumes in. I'd like to be able to see them along the way. Yeah.
Right. Since I've got them electronically, probably I can forward them to you 3 the same way. Does that work?
And wasn't the last one, didn't we have like 13 members?
Oh, yeah.
I hope not to have
exactly
that many.
That was humongous.
But, I mean, this would be a good forum to ask if there's someone who's interested in being the staff rep to email you, or someone who, as a parent, and we could pick a number.
Let's have a meeting in order to decide that first.
It seems like there's some disagreement about the process for that subcommittee. So maybe we should discuss it as a whole committee, since we're the ones that sort of gave the subcommittee the purview of doing their process. So why don't we discuss it a little bit?
All right. Yes.
I agree with Jim. You got a committee, get going. We don't need to broaden it. We have a serious, short timeline and a real challenge. We have some people who raise their hand to deal with it. I don't think we need to pack that committee. It'll just slow it down.
Why don't we meet as a subcommittee next week and decide what configuration we want to
but we don't have time to get that out to the public, that if there's people that would like to participate. I mean, traditionally, don't you go out and visit if it's a working superintendent?
Most of them aren't, they're interim, so they are retired superintendents.
Well, we have to research, references. Their references and.
I'm not sure they could be visitations because of the position. I mean, maybe people will take an interim position, but it seems to me that if they are in a superintendent position now, they're not going to want a part-time superintendent position. You know what I'm saying?
Just time-wise, if your decision will be made, or our decision will be made by May 10th, that means there's only one more full school committee, April, whatever, 25th, 6th, I don't know. So, are we going to be prepared at the April meeting to make a decision, or are we going to have a special meeting?
Probably we'll have some special meetings.
Okay. Do you think we should? I wonder if we should very soon nail down a date for the whole committee to meet or at least review.
So, excuse me, yes, are people submitting references along with their?
I have, the way the ad is, it's your personal information and resume and a letter of interest.
But no references?
Yeah,
and references?
I didn't say that, I meant to. So,
Anybody applying for a job assumes they're going to be requesting references.
exactly.
Well.
So what's everybody thinking they want? Spit it out.
Well,
everybody's dancing around things and I'm not hearing anything.
We need to act quickly. So I think that we should meet next week and decide what we recommend.
All right, so, yes, Deb and then David.
On the smaller committee that's going to be reviewing, my feeling is that it should have at least one parent and one teacher.
Okay.
It should be more than just the school committee group. It should have at least 3 more people. Not as large as the last one, but I think you need a varied group.
David?
I want to make sure that we give due consideration, and I consider a shared central office scenario something that really needs due consideration, and we have a rare opportunity. Most districts of our size and our position have superintendents who are trying to preserve their jobs and not looking at shared solutions. We have a departing superintendent, assistant superintendent, we need a business manager, we need a lunch manager, and we're extremely small. We need to really pull the thread with Mohawk, talk some more to Gil Montague, and look at new ways forward.
Has Mohawk returned from their school committee? They were supposed to meet with their school committee and get back as to whether or not their school committee was on board with even sharing services.
I haven't heard that.
Just for clarification, Michael had called me after that meeting that we had, and they were going, because we weren't sure what we were going to do. They were waiting actually to find out, if the committee was going to move forward. They were interested. I think they still are, but they actually were waiting for the committee to come back to them.
Our committee or their committee?
Their committee was fine. They were willing to start right away, but I think that we hadn't, you hadn't had a full committee meeting or really flushed it out at all after that meeting. I'm not sure where the Gil Montague was as well, because I think we met with them as well. So I'm not sure that the feedback got back to those districts. So I'm not sure it's that they're not interested.
I thought I heard the Gil Montague School Committee voted against.
They did. They did.
They voted against it?
Even with the grant
Yes.
to study this in hand,
They
they,
didn't have
For the
time to
coming
do it
year.
For the coming
For
year.
the coming year.
For the coming year.
Oh.
To do it right away. They're interested, but not for the immediate
Not
future.
immediately.
Right.
I see hands out there.
Well, I
Yes.
was just going to clarify, because I've been going to the civic leaders. They just didn't feel like they had enough time right now, but they still are using their grant. And in some ways, the Heart Committee and the civic leaders are somewhat working together. And so, you know, they just couldn't make the decision right now. It doesn't mean that next year they won't consider it.
Yes. So I won't presume to speak for any other teachers in the district, but I'll speak for myself, which is that with the changes going on right now in central office, it feels really huge. And I feel as a teacher in the district, like we're reeling a bit. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm against regionalizing. I think there's some great things about it, but I think trying to do it right now this year would really be a rush. And I think that our district needs, we need someone in our central office, we need a situation, I should say, in our central office that feels like it's going to pull us together, centralize us for a year, while we're looking at some other options. That's, I'm speaking as just me. Thank you.
Yeah, can we just meet next week, our subcommittee, so we
Yeah.
can stay focused?
Just,
and
we're
decide
getting
how
way
many
off
more
track.
people we want?
regularly.
Every week.
We're the ones who volunteered to do it.
But that doesn't mean that we should be the ones that, the subcommittee should make the decision to expand.
We don't make the
I
decision,
think-
the whole
I
committee
think
makes the
that-
decision.
what is being proposed is for the four people to
Moving
get
forward.
together and decide what the next steps are, and then to proceed from there. That will give us next week, and it would be 2 more weeks before, or a week and a half before the applications close. So we could figure out before we got the applications of exactly what we needed to do. And then I would imagine we would want to open it up to a bigger picture.
But when would the full
So
committee vote that?
let's us meet after the meeting and decide when we'll meet next
Okay,
week.
all right.
Or we could spend the rest of the night talking about it.
What was that, Peggy?
Our time is so scrunched.
know
If
it
we
is.
wait to vote on it as a full committee, to add to this committee that's already been voted on.
We haven't.
I think maybe we'll have to ask the committee to let us decide what we want the full search committee to look like, and to start the process as soon as we get the applications in. Does that make sense?
Pat, excuse me, it might be a good idea to, since the deadline is May 10th for making a decision, and that's a
Right.
Thursday.
Yes.
How about we schedule that as a full committee meeting to make a decision? May
All right.
10th.
What about April 10th is when the applications will be done?
Well,
Exactly. I'm looking for my.
but we're not gonna,
We should meet.
so I suggest we put May 10th in our calendars
Yep,
to
I
meet
think
as a
that's
full
right.
school committee,
And that's a Thursday night.
Thursday night.
And those all seem to be good times for us.
7 p.m.
Yes.
May 10th, it's a
It's
Thursday.
on a Thursday. I forgot my date book. Anybody know? Actually, I'll look at Martha's. So the 10th is on a Tuesday of April.
So
If we want to look over, we could view the applications on the 12th and get together with whomever we decide the screening committee would be.
Okay, so we'll call that the search committee meeting on the 12th.
12th.
April 12th.
And
Thursday.
probably then again on the 19th.
It's my birthday.
Oh, good, we're doing birthday cake.
There's a whole lot of responsibility on the search committee to weed out the applicants. Would it help to send each of the school committee members the applications that come in?
Yes, as they come.
So we can help with questions or anything, not that we would.
I thought it wouldn't be considered confidential until we.
Yeah, I think
you
think
can't
those,
send those
I think
resumes.
those resumes go only to the people in the screening committee.
You know what, if it's on in an email, it's not all that confidential.
So if we get, Gail,
I had a major part in,
yes, that's
alongside
what
of
we need.
NASDAQ, running the lab search. And you really need to be careful and follow the parameters and the rules and the guidelines. And it's very clear that resumes of people of applicants of the position that you're speaking of and the business manager do not go online. The person who's in charge of organizing that group has them on paper, gives them to people, and collects them at the end, and then gives them out again. They're not for people to have on internet or email and perhaps forward to someone. I mean, I would caution you
Just bring that
as school committee members.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because I did not realize that.
I think we should nominate Gail to be on our committee.
I think so too.
Gail, does that even pertain when they send all of the information by email?
Yes.
If they're sending the application with their references
You would
and their
typically,
resume by email?
Goes to one
I don't
person.
know the answer,
you would typically not do that.
but you
One person.
wouldn't,
know,
right?
I just have-
I mean, it usually goes to a school spring
Right.
or a NASDAQ organization that a district would pay to run the interviews,
I'm just saying that
which
Pat
in
had
that case
received-
was
Pat
really
had
me.
received these by
I
email.
would think you treat them all the same. If you can't email one, you can't email any of them.
Right.
Doesn't that make sense? So, you just won't do it. So, the 12th, the 19th, we have a school committee meeting on the 26th. Let's put those dates all down as dates that somebody is going to get together to work on this search. All right? Does that make sense? And we'll let people know. And Peggy's idea of getting committee people interested and involved, if you would like to become part of the committee to search this out, could you send Pam your name? And then we'll decide what to do with it when Jim and John and Peggy and I get together. We may or may not, but we need to have some names out there.
Are you saying committee, but you mean community?
No.
Okay.
There will be a search committee. We're just a search in the search of.
Okay. Yeah.
Sort of, kind of. Now, is everybody totally confused?
Yeah.
Can you, I would invite a motion to the effect that the committee would give the search committee the ability to name who they would like on a final search committee. Does that make sense?
No, are you talking about?
I move that we give the school committee search committee the authority to choose members from the community to join the search committee. Does that make sense?
If they so choose.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
All right. Martha made a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Yes.
A second?
All right. All those in favor?
Can we discuss for a second? before
Yes,
we
you
vote?
can. Sure.
Okay. Gail, why don't you go first?
I think we should take responsibility for our process a little bit here and not leave that decision to the search committee. I think we should decide right now
Okay.
whether or not we're going. We already have a search committee, we already had a process.
All right.
Peggy's introduced a new idea. I think we should decide and move on.
Sounds good to me.
But Gail, you want to?
I was just going to say that I thought you already discussed what you're discussing now.
Yeah.
Well,
But if you're going to involve community members on your committee, I mean, there are many teachers sitting here in the audience. I don't think you should not have an educator or another administrator on the committee either.
you're right.
I would also like to recommend having one or two students on the committee.
So what's the motion on the floor right now? Is there a motion on the floor?
The motion on the floor is that that the full committee is giving the authority to the search committee to add to their committee community members who are interested.
Are we directing them to, or are we giving them authority to if they decide
Authority
to?
to if they decide to. It's up to them how many and whom.
Could I speak to that?
Sure, go for it.
I'm okay with that motion, and I would urge the committee to just go ahead and function. We're on a short timeline, and I don't think we should be making these changes.
When the original motion was made and it said community members, I myself assumed that meant anybody, staff, administration, teacher, whoever the committees see fit. I think that's included in committee, or community.
Right.
So,
Are you saying, Bill, that when the original small group was set up, it was already set up as potentially
No, I
including
think when
community
they
members?
decide who they want to add in to help to expand it, that community means everybody.
Okay.
I withdraw my second. I think we've got it covered with our subcommittee, that we're gonna decide who to involve and expedite the
okay.
process.
I just was writing down something. I know I'm talking around in circles.
So the motion is dying.
We're still discussing. All right?
But John withdrew his second.
Approved your second, which means it.
Okay.
Second to what?
All right, then it's it. So what would happen if we said to join us in this search committee, that we put in an administrator, a teacher, a parent, a student, and one community member? That would be 5.
Yeah, we have 4, so it should be odd, right?
Yeah.
Typically.
So that would be 9. I think it gets bigger than that, and
No,
it
I
gets
wouldn't really bigger than that.
really difficult.
I was thinking just one parent or community member,
Okay.
one teacher or staff, and one administrator. Just 3 more.
Say that again?
Then now it would be even.
3 plus 4 is
Oh,
7.
Yeah. David?
You know,
We got close to $1 million deficit, we don't have a budget, and we've saved the most important thing for last, and I'm going brain dead, and I may leave soon.
we need to
Can we-
move on from this.
We have a process, we have a short timeline, I think we need to move along.
Pretty big
John is
decision we have to
his
make.
second, we're not
guys
even
made it
discussing a
decide.
motion any longer.
Would somebody like to make a motion and move on as David suggested?
I move that we entrust this process with our committee. And I would appreciate a second.
I'll second.
Second,
Okay, discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? That's abstaining.
Thank you, David.
Did you get the abstaining?
Gilbert.
Gilbert. Okay. All right. Now, we're on to the big thing, our budget. So, David, do you want to lead us through, or does Ruth want to lead us through, or?
David's the chair.
David is.
How about, I will start with a kind of a broad brush approach and hand it over to Ruth. We have essentially, do you want to speak before I do?
I had a question. what budget are we actually looking at? The one from the last
Well,
week
if you
or the
let
one
me
from
talk,
2
I'll
weeks
tell you,
ago?
okay?
Thank you.
We have prepared for your consideration 3 budget scenarios. The most important thing we do tonight is affirmatively vote on something so that our treasurer can issue a letter to the towns and the towns have a number for town meeting. So, in rough terms, we have a scenario that increases assessments to the towns in the aggregate of a little less than $400,000. 384 is what is sticking in my memory. 94, well, there's I think there are 4 versions actually. There's also a version, I believe, which adds in the $131 or $2,000 that my budget committee voted to increase the assessment over what the superintendent had recommended. And then there's a third scenario wherein the assessment goes up to no town. The effect of that is that the assessments actually go down for 3 towns, and the school is left with a need to cut probably about $600,000. So these are 3 scenarios, and we need to emerge tonight having voted a budget which we can continue to work on and refine, but the towns need an assessment number. So we heard at the pre-hearing that Bernardston Finance Committee might be able to live with a $400,000 roughly increase. That's the close to $400,000 scenario. So I'm going to let Ruth walk us through the 3 options. But rather than get too deep in the weeds, I really think we've got to emerge tonight with a assessment number.
Okay, so the first, you have 4 sheets there, double-sided. The very first sheet is the subcommittee budget, 388. And you'll see down, if you go in the middle of the page, you'll see that the budget FY19 is $13,935,906. And to the right of that, it had a negative $131,632. So the next, or the back of that sheet gives you the assessments to the town based on that dollar figure. So if you look at below, it's a 2.87 increase at the bottom, and then you see the 4 different towns' assessment based on that figure. The next one is, while the subcommittee met, they had taken a vote to, and went back and listened to the vote. It wasn't a vote to increase by the 131,000. The motion that was made and seconded and approved by everyone said that the same dollar amount as the prior year would be the dollar amount, and that's why this sheet has 67,538, and you see over in the right column that it's zeroed out. So if you look at that one, and then you look at the back of that page, then go down to the bottom, you're going to see the assessments. This is a 4.36% increase, and the assessment to the towns is larger. So that was the one that on the 8th, the subcommittee voted to increase that budget. The next 2 were, let's see, this one was, if we did no increase.
Can we just skip that one, please?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that's ridiculous.
Eliminate it.
Okay, eliminate that. And then the last one was my recommendation, and it's 14,077,676. It's essentially the same as the subcommittee, except it's a little bit higher because it's higher. Anyhow, if you look at the second page, it's a 4.4% increase, and then you can see the assessment to the towns. Two of the towns has like a 5.3% increase, and the other two towns have like a 3.2. So what you need to do is you really need to determine what is the dollar amount, what is the total dollar amount that you would want to spend. All the line items, they're there. I mean, there's still going to be changes as those go along. But these are the scenarios that we had put forth that would support the district, not in a really healthy way, but this is where we are, and the towns. And again, it's not a great budget for them either, but it's what we thought was, the subcommittee thought it was the most reasonable that we could deal with and moving forward. So those are your options, and you just need to pick one that you decide on.
No, go ahead. So I just want to be sure I'm right about this. The one voted by the budget subcommittee, I'm looking at the back of the sheet that looks like this, is the one that has the 4.36% increase way at the bottom, right? Okay. And that's the one we talked about at the hearing and so forth, 14,067,538. Okay. The next one we're eliminating, and the one that you're recommending, Ruth, I guess you're recommending it, is $10,000 more than the other one. It's 1477.
Right, correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yes, that's correct.
Isn't that? I believe the budget that we discussed at the budget hearing was $20,000 more than the one the subcommittee voted on, 3.8.
I think you're right. Yeah. Peggy, you had your hand raised.
I don't understand what she just said.
Okay, at the time that the budget subcommittee met the last time,
Oh, the 14th?
yeah, the night you
Okay.
weren't there.
Well, then
the
no one
figure-
will remember it.
It was the
No,
eighth.
It was the 8th.
It was the
that we
8th.
made the
Yeah,
increase.
then it was. And she said that she wanted 131,000. Was that figure right?
No.
Yes, which brought it up to $14,183,032.
So the motion that was made, and I went back to the tape to make sure I had it right, because there was a lot of discussion afterwards. The motion was made by you to have the same numbers the year before. Yeah, that's what the motion is. Pam and I went through the tapes because I wasn't sure. And so that's why that. Doesn't mean you can't increase it now.
I'm just confused, Ruth, because I remember this was the paper I was looking at.
Right.
And this is the amount I said to increase the budget by.
So I understand that, and that's why I looked for it, but the motion was made to have the same dollar amount as last year, and then you had discussion, but never another motion was made to actually,
Yes, it was.
I went home after that meeting, added in the numbers of all, how much it would affect each town, sent an email to Pat and said, do you think Northfield's gonna go for 5.28? I came away with it matching fiscal 18's budget amount from that meeting on the 8th. Whether that was your intention, I'm not sure, but, I mean, I wrote it all down, I went home and recalculated all the percentages to see what that was,
Because I remember you were proposing a budget to include curriculum coordinator and this other stuff, the amount.
I had, the things that I wanted, but with that 131, but that is up to our,
I know.
And before we can make that decision, I need to know what we did with now, I mean, Ruth's proposal would be 141,700 increase. Where, I mean, if you upped it another 10, why?
Why? I mean, really, we just have staffing. I mean, we really made some cuts, the administration, to try to get to this dollar amount.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's not a great budget. I think they can live with it, but it sure would be nice if this was the last year that we did this, because we've been doing it every year.
Question, this might be from a different era, but is it true that town meeting cannot raise your figure, but they can lower it?
No,
No, it used to be like that.
Canard.
Can't lower if you
Yeah.
can't.
Either vote it or turn it down.
Right. Up or down.
That's not true.
Jane's right, you can
Can
increase
be
it.
amended on the floor.
Yeah.
And increase is at the discretion of the moderator, how big a percentage he or she will allow.
Stand corrected.
And of course, you can always decrease it, if you dare.
What did you say, Ms.
We know what Northfield can vote.
I said, of course, you can always decrease it if you dare.
So technically, if you reduce the budget, and that it is like a no vote, you either vote it yes, up, or you vote it down. If you vote it down, it's a no vote, but that's okay, because sometimes when you vote that, you put a number in there so that it informs the committee when they re-look at it, that that's kind of where you were at. But technically, you say yes or no. Now, if you raise the money, I don't think anybody's going to argue with you.
No, but if you have voted, if more than one town votes a number that is less than what the school district has asked for, then another whole set of parameters come into place, which you don't want to discuss tonight.
Right.
No. Let's not do that.
Okay, how's the committee? What do you think?
What feedback have we got from the towns?
Excuse me?
What feedback do we have from the towns? They're looking at this too.
They are looking at this. Everyone, as we've heard in the past, yeah, they don't like the figures, any of them.
Considering the sentiment in the room 1 week ago, there was quite a number of people there that wanted to raise it quite a bit more than it is. There's a room full of people there just 1 week ago that wanted to raise it quite a bit.
Oh, I'm all for it. I just don't,
I have a few issues after speaking to people on the search. We don't have budgeted the amount that we need for either the business manager or a part-time superintendent, and that concerns me. It concerns me if for some reason we can't make the loan, which I fully think we will, but we don't have anything for a buffer to pay for an overseer if that happens. Those things concern me. And I really don't understand, this budget has been explained to us a lot of times, but the figures seem to change enough, so it's really hard for me to understand where we are, I guess. And so I have difficulty in looking through, seeing if we have money enough in there to meet the needs that we have. I asked Ruth today if we had a balanced budget, and she told me, yes, we did have. And I fully think it is balanced, but it's balanced on paper, but will it be balanced at the end of next year? That's my concern. Other committee members? Jim?
I just feel like we've been discussing this budget ad infinitum forever, and we need to make a decision tonight and in a timely manner, not beat it to the bush again. I would personally, I would like to just recommend the budget that was, the subcommittee voted on March 8th, which is the second page in your packet.
Can you read the number for us?
Which number would you like? David?
Something that identifies it.
The bottom, the very bottom middle column says 14183,032.
Well, that includes the.
That includes all the capital.
Well, okay then.
Well, you're gonna vote on all of them anyway.
Page 2.
Right, but I want to do.
On the other side is
Right.
4.36.
You gotta do this one first.
So it's the one that, on the assessment side, there's a
One for-
label that says subcommittee vote 3818, top left corner.
Yes, it says actually just the 3/8, the 18's not there.
I'll second your motion.
What was the number again?
Same as last year, 14,067,538.
That, we're confused with.
That's the one that you could,
Second page.
in the left-hand corner, it said subcommittee vote.
If you flip it to the assessments in the upper left corner, it says.
I can't,
Johnny, you have that?
yeah,
I know you've got a motion on the floor.
that's okay.
Just comment from a town's point of view. We kind of are looking here tonight for a total amount that you're going to be asking for. And have you decided whether to give us an article for the school lunch deficit or not? That kind of makes a difference of how much money we're going to have to come up with.
I believe that was what was intended.
Well, somebody needs to get the letters to the selectmen to get on the warrant.
So, we already made a decision to do that. Sounds like David thought he already did it, but that just needs to be clarified, right? The proper documentation just needs to get to the proper person.
We don't know what you asked for. Are you asking for each town to pay their own deficit? Are you
No.
asking for each town to
That's,
pay?
at the time I wrote motions, that's what it was for each town. Actually, I had 3 different scenarios and sent them to Russell for a review, and I really haven't heard on them. To tighten up the language so there would be no confusion what the money's for, and also looking for a way to protect the town who might feel flush enough to pay more in now, but than perhaps one of our sister towns, but not be asked to come to the altar and split it again. Have, recognize that it's been, because any town who could afford to take care of their share, and we're apportioning it according to the operating formula. We're not going after Leiden for $190,000. Yeah, well, we're all in this together, folks. Think of it as a canoe. We need to have a little bit on one side, a little on the other, and we'll go straight.
We just need facts. So your proposal was to divide it according to the above minimum formula.
Right.
And to ask for 1/3 for each of the next 3 years.
Actually, when I wrote it, it was for the entire amount. So.
That was one of his proposals.
I can tell you that if you're asking for the entire amount from Bernardston, we don't have it. We want it in 3 installments.
To be clear, we're just talking about the budget now, and the lunch debt is not part of this.
Well, except that the towns, the finance committee.
It impacts how they respond to our
Will
budget.
be considering their ability to meet the assessment in light of all their other
You do
school
both at
spending.
once, and then second.
So Lois, what I heard you say is that you want, and Jane, that you'd like the assessment letter to be 1/3 of the operating, and we would give that to you, we'll get it to you tomorrow, and then that would inform what you would be able to pay with regard to the budget itself.
It would help us to know the overall picture, yes.
Thank you.
I think besides this, somewhere I've seen that you have a few capital articles that are not too costly this year, but we need that breakdown too.
Okay.
But time is of the essence here. If you want anything from Northfield, we better know it. I mean, we had a deadline a month ago, but the final meeting will be the Finance Committee and the Select Board this coming Monday night. And so we'll need figures by then.
So it's not, we need figures on the debt.
the technology debt? I mean, we've guessed at those, but we
Yes.
don't know what our share is.
Right.
We need your vote on this, so we know what it is. Or what you can't go above if you take your vote tonight.
So that would be important for us to vote this whole, each individual item here.
Conversations for the committee?
I'd like to amend the figure 14,278,551.
Where did you?
That's
How did you?
1.5 over last year.
14,278,551.
Correct.
And I'll speak to that to a degree. Bill and I really haven't spoken, but,
I need a second first, I'll second,
Okay.
just so we can discuss it.
Is that on one of these pages?
Jim spoke. It is not.
No.
It is not.
He's raising it.
Did you second it, John?
Yeah.
Jim, yeah. I'll speak to that. I'm looking at a level funded budget. And we all know that what we paid for power last year, or what we paid for a dozen eggs, or what we paid for insurance, it's all gone up. So for us to have a level funded budget sort of ties our hands. Nobody can operate the same this year as they did last year. So I don't think a 1.5% budget increase is that much. That's only up
Not much.
a little bit. And I know it's going to impact towns. I'm a taxpayer as well as everybody else in this room, but I also feel that we need to be able to operate our schools the way, to pay the bills that we know are coming in, let's put it that way. I don't think we're being extravagant at all. If you've lived through these budget meetings we've had, we're not being extravagant, but I think to under budget and then have problems the end of the year, it's not being realistic. I saw you had your hand up, David.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this is not going to pass. And then what's going to happen is the Department of Revenue will put us on a level funded budget.
Well, that's where.
And we aren't going to have the revenues to support it, and then we're going to be forced to make these cuts. That's the way we can delay and back into this. But I mean, we're looking, the increase in Northfield is sort of astounding to me. And they're half of our operating, and
Right, you're gonna ask them for 350,000. That's what the increase in the market is.
yeah. I think we ought to, and the other point I wanted to make is that I believe that in much of government and much of everything else, we are dealing with level funded budgets. And they do mean we do not have level service budgets, we have level funded budgets. But we're finding ways. But in my town, there are no wage increases for anybody this year and none last year. And we're trying not to grow our budget.
Given the overwhelming sentiment in the room 1 week ago, that, there were people looking at 2.5% increase. And it's overwhelming. The cuts have been enough, too much. And
I'm just a little wary of going too far off the recommendation of the budget subcommittee. I remember 2 years ago we did that. We raised it, and it got us further into trouble. I think it's important. I know Pat mentioned things like fuel and water and things. There have been, those line items have been raised in the individual school accounts. So some of the things you mentioned are accommodated for. I mean, I realize it would be a very nice thing to have it. I think that's, what, 271,000 you want to raise it? I don't have that figure. Or how much was that?
Looks like 211,000.
211,000, I just feel is too steep.
Just so people understand, I mean, I'm all for a level funded budget, but what that means is actually a $750,000 decrease in our services. Because there's one line item in the budget, $350,000 for special needs transportation, that wasn't even there last year. That's 2.5% increase by itself. And revenue is down roughly 400,000. 300,000 of that was an overestimate of our transportation reimbursement, which I don't know how that got so far off. And another $100,000 it says tuition and fees. I don't know if that's just Vernon tuition or a combination of tuition and school choice together. But we have a $400,000 revenue decrease and a $350,000 line item increase just for one line item. So just to let everybody know, a level funded budget, we're gonna have to cut our budget $750,000. That's the bottom line. And I figured that all out through my own interpretation because all these subcommittee meetings, nobody's addressed any of this, and it's hard to figure out because the numbers change from week to week, meeting to meeting, but I just want to let people know, basically, $750,000 decrease if we vote a level funded. So I don't think that 1.5% increase, even though it means a lot to the towns, is a lot of money, really.
Not from our perspective here.
Yeah, we're the school committee. We have to do what's best for the children, so.
And I believe and we've been told week after week, that we have cut everything but staff at this point. There's nothing else we can cut. It's gonna be staff that will have to go.
Shall we vote on the motion?
Yeah.
Which one?
Jeannie had her hand up
We have a
first, so
motion on the
let's-
floor.
We have two motions on the
You
floor.
can't have two motions on the floor.
We had
The
amendment
amendment, I'm
to the
sorry.
We had amendment,
Um,
right? To the motion.
I agree that people
That's the motion.
last
Then
week
you work your way
were
back.
all for increasing the budget, and that would be wonderful. But when we go to town meeting, that budget would not be voted in.
Lois.
I know you're focused on school, you have to be, and we want to support it to the best of our ability. But remember, we have other town departments. When you talk about any increase here over this, we just have to figure, okay, 50% of what you're asking for higher will come out of Northfield probably. And we have to have our highways in shape for your school buses to run. We have to have a fire department, we have a police department, and all our other administrative departments. So this is way out of line with what we've given the others. We understand some of it, the reason for it, but we get a lot of complaints from our other departments that you give the school just what they want and you expect us to get by with less. So it's just a dilemma that we've got to face. And you know, you justify the need and so forth, but so do the other departments. You know, we can't have their vehicles rusting out, and falling apart and so forth. We have to fund those as well. I know you hear that every year, but it's very real for us.
Okay, take Martha, and then we're gonna have to vote.
I just want to say, when I'm reflecting on all the speakers that you had, who said your job is for the education of the children. And as a community member, I would like you to ask for what you need and let's see what the community says about that. They're going to vote. Let's just ask for what you think you need. And you're advocating for the school, advocate for the school, and let's see what happens. It's a process. Just do the process.
Let's vote.
So there's a motion and a second on the floor. Bob, do you have anything different to say?
As a town official, this is what we have to do. We would love to build a new fire station, just like Northfield would. We would love to do this, but I'm just saying this. We are logical in what we present to the people because we don't want our budget voted down. And I'm going to tell you that's what's going to happen. That's okay.
But just like all the schools, the towns need to regionalize those services too.
The school's not regionalized yet.
So there's a motion on the floor for the figure of
the dollar figure again?
I have it written down here.
14,278,551.
Well, don't we have to vote on the amendment first?
Bill, mark it out.
And I believe we have to vote on the amendment.
14,278,551.
There has been an amendment to the main motion, so we have to vote on the amendment first, which is that figure. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
All right. So there has been a
Voting
motion
on the
and a second
amendment.
on the amendment, which is that. Did everybody get the figure?
Yep.
All right. All those in favor? 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah.
All right, the
The
motion fails.
because of,
Now, we have a new minute taker, and a vote like this should identify who voted for what, so let's help her out.
Yeah, because we had 5 people who opposed, so maybe the people who opposed could raise their hands so I can get your names down.
Gilbert.
David,
Martha.
Jeannie,
Peggy.
and Peggy. And, yeah, so there, and then everyone else supported. No abstentions?
No.
Pat didn't vote.
I did.
You did vote?
I did.
Do you have a meeting today?
Well, there are 2 people not here.
Oh, that's what it was.
Robin doesn't.
Oh, rather than.
So now we can act on the
So
original
now,
motion.
so now the number was the original last year's budgeted figure. Is that correct?
14,067,538.
Right, that's revenue. This is, I thought it was
It's,
the
they, yes.
14,183,032. I thought was the budgeted amount.
That includes the capital, that's
the
already been
capital. We're
voted
gonna do those
Yeah,
separate.
We don't need to vote on the capital again, we already committed to that years ago.
Yeah, this is all down here, ignore this part.
Right. Those are-
I don't know the correct procedure, but I wanted to amend it to 14,077,676, which is the recommended figure that came forth today from our
I
superintendent.
second that.
What was the number?
14,077,676.
676.
So that's number 4.
Correct.
Yep.
Number 4.
All right,
I second.
okay. So now we shall vote on the amended figure.
No, she made another amendment. Didn't you? We had an original motion, we had a motion to amend it, that failed, and then she came in with a
Right.
different number than the original motion, so that's another amendment.
That's what I just said.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to vote on the amended figure.
No, it's not amended, it's a proposed amendment. We haven't got to an amended figure yet.
Proposed. All right? Everybody with us? All those in favor?
So we're voting on that number Peggy cited, which is Ruth's proposal from tonight.
Right.
Exactly, 14,077,676. All those in favor of that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's down.
Let's help our note taker out again.
Let's try this.
David, Jean, Peggy,
Martha.
Martha.
And Deb.
Right, I have 4 people, Deb, David, Martha, Jean, Peggy, there's one more person.
Okay, raise your hands
Sue.
again if
Okay,
you're
thank
in
you.
favor of that
Sue?
motion.
Sue.
Got it. All right.
All right, opposed?
Jim, Bill, John,
And Pat.
and Pat.
This is confusing.
Okay,
Yes.
so that motion passes. Now we have an original motion on the floor.
No, we passed the amendment, so that's what we're voting on now. So we vote again on what Martha made an amendment. Now we've agreed to amend our motion, our original motion. Now we have to vote on the amended motion.
Oh, I thought that's what we were voting on. Okay.
I thought that's what I said.
I'm glad Lois is not here.
No, it has to be in two steps. You gotta
Isn't that the one that
vote to
Mark-
change
Vote
it.
to amend it.
I know, but I thought that's what I had
we have
said.
to
and
Oh, right,
obviously I-
okay.
So now we
I
have to
got it.
vote on the,
Keep going, so now we have to vote on the amended figure, which was the same as we just voted,
Yes.
all right? So all those in favor?
presumably we'll have the same people.
Now we're
picked up
voting on
one.
the amended figure.
We picked up a seventh person.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Bill, Deb, David, Martha,
Sue.
Sue, Jeannie, and Peggy.
Opposed?
What was that? Where did we vote? Did we vote this? No, we need to vote this in, the capital.
So don't turn your
don't
papers
think so.
away. We need to vote now on the capital, which is,
It's the same on every page, right?
It's, yeah,
It should be,
it's just,
Yeah.
115,494.
correct.
Would anyone care to make a motion to approve that capital expense?
I move that we approve the capital expense of $115,494.
You don't need to vote on that technology budget, you voted on it 4 years ago.
We must pay that.
Okay, so it's just the 12,640.
This will be the final payment.
Right.
Just the 12,641, and I would like to see that in two pieces. One for the carpet and one for the gym pad.
Yes.
All right, would you like to change your motion?
Yes.
We didn't have a second, so
Okay. So I move that we vote 12,641 for the PVRS capital project to go to, what did you say? Carpet?
And to break it out into two projects.
Break it into two projects, carpet and
Pads. Gym pads.
second?
Second.
All right,
He's second.
all those in favor of the capital project?
All right.
All right, that looks unanimous.
Right, and then we have to, I don't know which one we're at, with the level funded one, right? Do we have to, Pam has that we have to.
No,
We're on yours.
Right, which one are we on?
the last one, number 4.
You got that one? Yes,
That's one that passed.
Oh my gosh, okay, so,
This is where we're at right now.
Can I ask one?
okay. So, it's, according to Pam, we have to vote the assessment to the towns.
Would anyone like to make a motion to vote the assessment figures for the town?
Yeah.
It's on the
And
back
that's
of the last
total
page.
amount's right here.
Yep.
I move an assessment of $9,205,744.
74.
74. Yes, Bob, thank
All right?
you. Second, please.
Second?
Second it.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. I think I don't see Jeannie's hand, but I think he does. All right. That looks good. So that motion passes. David, can you repeat that figure? Okay. 9,205,774.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Peg.
It's on revenue, but I assume then on our revenue report, that it's just not up to date. I'm looking at the February one. It has, we budgeted $7,400 in interest for this year, for fiscal 18. We have received $865.94. Is that because it just isn't reflected? The treasurer hasn't.
Oh, here.
That's an interest? Yeah, it might be that it's either that. What did you say? The interest isn't gonna come in at that, or we haven't gotten it. I'd have to ask the treasurer that question.
Well, I mean, we're projecting $12,600 for fiscal 19. So, before we increase it by half again, I want to make sure that, I mean, I know that's small, but I mean.
No, I get it, yeah. I'll have the treasurer when she's out with it. She's still trying to straighten things out.
Was that January or February?
February.
It's February,
Same
yeah.
on both reports.
Yeah.
Got a long way to go on
But
that.
I will ask the treasurer to give us a report.
I know with some of the others are late, you know, I mean.
Well, right. All right, so we, the health insurance, David, are you gonna?
David, are you gonna lead us to
The health insurance?
Yeah, do we have good language for the adoption of the 32B? I mean, we adopted it a million years ago, but in the last 2 years, there were changes made that needed to be accepted. So I'm not quite sure how to frame this motion, but we need to adopt the provisions of, and perhaps just to revote that we adopt the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 32B.
18A required. And that
Sorry,
first
if I-
sentence, this one,
This one here.
is the very top. And this came from
32B,
our
section
attorney,
18A.
very, way up to A, statutory process A. MGLC 32B, section 18A is what that paper has on. I think we can just say that is the vote.
So I move that the Pioneer Regional School District Committee elect to engage in the process to change health insurance benefits under Mass General Law, Chapter 32B, Section 21 through 23.
21 through 23?
Sections 21 through 23.
Did we need to say we are adopting the chapter 32B, sorry, I think.
We have already adopted 32B, but sections 21
Okay.
through 23 were newly adopted, and since this is local option law, it didn't come with our assumption of those provisions. We need to vote them. The reason we're doing this is that unless we do so, and we attempted this at a meeting in Leiden last year, but it failed. If we don't do this, the only way we can make any changes in health insurance benefits is through contract negotiations. And underlying that, the term of the contract is that if we don't reach a contract, the terms of the current contract prevail until we have a new contract. There's no incentive for the association members to bargain away something that way. So this is the way that we can make necessary changes. So we're looking, even with the changes, if we vote this, we're looking at an increased health insurance premium with somewhat higher deductibles and co-pays. One provision of this is that in the first year, any savings that the district realizes due to the changes that it makes are shared with the association membership. 25% for them, 75% for us. So I don't think my motion got a second, and I talked anyway.
I'll second.
It's okay.
All right.
All right, is everyone comfortable with moving this?
No.
No.
Okay. That's what I thought you were waiting. Yes.
It feels complicated and surprising, and I don't feel like I understand what we're talking about or what I'm voting on. And I know that there's a lot going on that's complicated right now around negotiations around healthcare that affects all of us that are covered by our employer. What I think I'm starting to understand is that this is a proposal, well, I don't understand the proposal in general, and I've had it explained to me several times. At the time in Leiden too, at that time I was trying to understand it. Basically, it is taking out of the negotiation process, separating the negotiating process and the healthcare benefit package development, right? So it's saying that the towns could develop a package and just say, this is it, do you want it or not?
It's saying that the school committee can implement changes in health insurance. Now, when I proposed this in Leiden last year, it was, one example was we could change the percentage contributions. I personally don't support that because that comes from the employer is not taxable income, and so that the employee gets a greater bang for the buck. So we're not proposing that, but we spend over $2 million on health insurance, and the premium's going up 9%. That's going to be like close to $250,000, and we're going to have to. So those left working for us will have their old plan, and we're going to need to make staff cuts to realize that additional $250,000. I think we'll get better educational outcomes if we spend our money differently.
Peggy, go ahead. I already had a turn. Sorry.
Do we have an insurance advisory committee?
We do not at this time because we didn't have a 32B, but we would have an insurance advisory committee that, as far as I know,
We had already accepted 32B.
Right, but there are additional provisions that were voted by the legislature in the last 2 years, and because this is local option law, the fact that we had accepted it many moons ago, it does not mean that we had to, that these new provisions apply to us. This motion is to accept the additional provisions of those 3 sections.
I'd like to hear from the staff some more on this.
Well, that would be the advantage of having an insurance advisory committee. You have to have the president of each union represented. The law, I think it's 8 people that have to be on the committee. So if you have more unions than that, then you have to have one person representing both. You need a retiree rep on an insurance advisory committee. And those people sit down and discuss whatever changes are being proposed by the administration.
No one's arguing against that, but until we vote this, we cannot, there's no reason to take on the next things.
I'm trying to help people understand that we aren't gonna just say, okay, here it is, folks.
Right, well, there's Dupre's letter, lines it out.
So if we vote,
right,
am I correct that if we vote yes on this provision tonight, as stated here, there will, by law, or by requirement, be a insurance advisory committee?
Correct.
Am I correct on that?
Yes, that is
So
true.
there will be a chance for people to come to the table, union, administration, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, that's the way it was. I worked for the town of Greenfield, and that was the way it was
I
done.
see.
Whenever the mayor suggested, you know,
Thank
then
you
we
for bringing that
spent
up.
many, many meetings discussing possible scenarios and.
Right.
Okay.
But if we don't approve updating, then it's a moot point.
Well, I'm not sure about what we should have already had an insurance advisory committee.
And if you vote it down, and we're not gonna be able to get in our current insurance, because we would have already signed up to do that, and they're open enrollment in April, and we won't have had an agreement to do that. And so then the costs are gonna even be higher. I mean, it's not something anybody wants to do, but I think with the protections of that committee, we'll be able to do something that's good for the staff, and at the same time, we can have health insurance, which if we have to go out on our own, it's fearful of what that might look like.
So, we have a motion, and did that receive a second?
I believe I second.
You seconded it? Oh, geez. Are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor of adopting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Did you get the names?
No. You know what's helpful if you can just say the names and then I can just type them without even looking.
Okay.
So you can just say them.
Jim.
Jim.
John.
Deb Gillett.
David.
Martha Morris.
Jeannie Milton.
Peggy.
You may be opposed, or you could fill in the blank.
The rest
No,
abstain.
I'm not opposed, I'm abstaining. I don't understand this enough to vote on it. I'm really uncomfortable with it, so I'm not voting on it.
Phil?
Opposed.
One abstaining and one opposed. Did you get the names?
I guess you're.
I don't know.
I would not have understood it
Sorry.
either,
It's
unless
okay.
it had been explained to me like 8 times.
Okay, number 4 is you, Pat.
I have had given to me, because I have to be here one day, some fabric samples and some thread samples and I don't remember what else there was. 4 different, basically they were teaching samples that Brohammond had when she was teaching school here, about the time that the school started, Pioneer started. And they were down in the bowels of the school, and we uncovered them and brought them up. And it was the thought of Sharon Fontaine and myself, and Diane Colleen, who also taught with Bro, that they maybe should be donated to the Northfield Historical Society. They're nothing that you would use that wasn't a teaching tool, but it's something that is really neat to look at, and I think the Historical Society would like those. But because they belong to the school, we need to have a vote to have that happen.
Pat, I move that we declare the fabric and thread surplus to the needs of the district and donate it to the Northfield Historical Society.
Second.
Second.
In memory of Bill Hammond?
Yes.
All right, that works for me. Is there a second? Somebody did second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Pat,
Yes,
it's very late.
it is.
Can I make a motion that we adjourn and take up whatever's left from this agenda at our next meeting? I added the next item, and I'm happy to discuss that at the next meeting.
But there's also, you have a sheet that kind of explained it.
I saw that,
Okay.
yep, yep.
I second.
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 And thank you.
Fourth.
And third and fourth.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Are we adjourned? Good job.
That's my favorite.